Hello everyone, thanks again for joining the leadership team series of interviews that we've been conducting over the last year. And I am thrilled today to be able to share a little bit about Dr. Janet Buchanan, our Vice President of Philanthropy. Most of you may recognize Janet. Janet's been here for some time now, but this may be a good introduction to those who've moved in over the last couple of years during this pandemic and may not have had the opportunity to invest some time with Janet. So I affectionately call her Dr. J. So I hope that when you walk away from this, maybe you have a way to remember her like I do. So we'll jump right in if you don't mind. And what I can share from the get-go here is that typically it's a little bit personal and a little bit professional, and really the goal here is to allow our residents the opportunity to get to know some of the team. And I'm thrilled for you to get to know Dr. Janet here because she's an interesting lady and a lot of fun. So we're going to kick it off with some softballs here, and I hadn't warned Janet yet, but I'll give her a heads up now. Sometimes I do a follow-up question or two. Certainly if anything catches you off guard, you're welcome to punt to the end. So we'll start with the first one. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Texas. I am a sixth generation Texan. The great majority of my ancestors were Texans back to the 1800s.
Wow. So what part of the state? Texas is large, of course.
So I grew up in North Texas in Arlington.
Okay.
So
near Dallas.
yes.
So you're a Cowboys fan.
I'm absolutely a Cowboys fan.
I knew we liked each other for a reason. So where do you live today?
I live now in Pennsylvania,
Okay.
just over the Maryland border. One little hilltop over from Ski Liberty, so in that area.
So is there snow yet?
There's not snow yet.
No, they haven't started making it yet, I think.
The lights were on today. I was surprised to see they turn the lights on as they in their preparations for snowmaking. So.
Well, I'm always curious. How cold is it in the morning right now?
Usually low 30s, upper 20s.
Okay, so not too different than what the rest of us are experiencing. So where did you go to college?
That's an interesting question. I have a little collection of mugs on one of my shelves in my office, and that collection of mugs is one mug from each college or university that I attended. There are 10 of them. My undergraduate work started at Arkansas State, and then I attended graduate school at the University of Dallas and got my doctorate from the Graduate Theological Foundation, which was in South Bend, Indiana. I'm the first person in my family in all of those generations to ever go to college. So I kind of got started and kept going all the way. So
that is absolutely terrific. So there's probably a lot of pride in your family with regards to everything that you've accomplished. That's terrific. It's quite a journey jumping from school to school there. So what led you out to Arkansas? School,
yeah. The opportunity to go to school out there. I did not finish there, but that's where I started.
Gotcha.
I actually don't have a bachelor's degree.
No kidding.
Right.
Okay.
I have 2 master's degrees and a doctorate.
That is different. You're unique as I do. So, I want to back up for a second. So we talked a little bit about where you lived today in Pennsylvania. So what made you choose the mountains? Because you've described it a number of times to me, and I'm curious if that played into why you chose to live there, but maybe I'll let you color that.
I've always enjoyed the mountains. I think there's like ocean people and mountain people, and I can remember the very first time I saw any kind of mountains. They weren't very large. It was the Ozarks in Arkansas, and I just fell in love and thought someday I'd like to live in a place like this. So I have always, in my own homes, lived in the mountains.
You know, it's one of the things that when I moved out to the Midwest for a few years, that was one of the things I missed the most, was always having the mountains somewhere in view and always having the ability to go hike and get out and have that solitude. And just that quiet is intoxicating at times. So I get where you're coming from. So how did you get into senior housing?
I was thinking about that. There was kind of took me a long time to get here. When I got my MBA, I got a concentration in healthcare administration, and my thesis work was a long-term care project. But I didn't land in long-term care right away. First, I worked for a very large health system in their health insurance division, and then I was recruited by a hospital healthcare system out in Oregon, where I moved, and we had all the care in the community. So we had a hospital, we also had nursing home, and kind of all the levels of care, clinics and pharmacies and everything. I was out there for about 10 years, and received a call from a recruiter one day about a position in Emmitsburg, Maryland. And that position brought me here. I was working for the Daughters of Charity, and that was kind of truly where I fell primarily into a long-term care ministry. They had 2 nursing homes and assisted living and independent living, among some of their other ministries that we served as well.
What did you like most about the West Coast?
The weather. The weather was beautiful. It was only 60 miles to the ocean. I lived in the mountains. It was rural and peaceful, and loved to go hiking. There were hundreds and hundreds of waterfalls, and it was 60 miles to the Cascades, but where I lived was kind of a banana belt, so we didn't get a lot of snow. So it was kind of an ideal location in between the mountains and the ocean.
Not snowed in on any given year, though,
right.
Which is nice. So we have a similar thing in our past, because we both started off in hospitals and healthcare before we landed in senior housing, and so I have increasingly found a number of people that I've gotten to know through senior housing that have come that route. And it's always interesting because it's similar to what you experienced, either a recruiter or you just kind of happened upon it. It wasn't something that you set out to do, so I can appreciate that. So why did you decide to work at Lutheran Social Ministries of Maryland, or previously at Carroll Lutheran Village?
So I came out here, as I said, to work for the Daughters of Charity. After I'd been there for a couple of years, they consolidated all of their regions into one national organization again. That was housed primarily in St. Louis. So it made a number of leadership positions redundant. So at that point, I spent a couple of years doing some consulting work. I enjoyed that a lot, but all of my networks and all of my connections, I'd only been out here for 2 years, were all out west. So I was hopping on a plane all the time, and that just got old. And the opportunity came open for this position. I had done, especially at the hospital, a lot of grant writing work, and real particularly that aspect of fundraising, but I had a lot of other fundraising kinds of experiences, and I just missed the people. I missed being with the people I served. I missed even being with colleagues and coworkers, and so decided I would give that a try for a little while, see how that worked out, and so I'm now in my 12th year here, so I guess it's worked out okay.
So thinking back to some of the things you've shared, so you went from the Southwest out to the Pacific, out to the East Coast. So when you think about all those locations, and you've had significant time in each, do you still have that fondness or that desire to be back in Texas someday, or is that something in your past at this point?
It's way too hot. I have no desire to live in Texas full-time. When I moved to Oregon, I said, I was looking at that point in my career. I had gotten my master's degree and had worked for a few years, looked for other opportunities, and I said, draw a line across the country, north of Oklahoma, and I'll go anywhere that's north of that.
Well, one thing that I've been asked a lot, and you're a seasoned veteran, but been asked a lot by people who are just growing into this business. And one of the things that I always share with them is the more mobile you can be, the more opportunities you'll have. And that should come naturally in your thought process, but I know those moves are sometimes challenging to do, but they do open up a lot of different avenues for your success long-term and in your personal growth. So I'm going to jump into philanthropy as a whole. So how would you describe your role as Vice President of Philanthropy?
So we're a small department. There are 3 of us total. And we all wear a lot of hats. Philanthropy is unique to each person, each place, each ministry, and especially each nonprofit. Philanthropy looks very different in a very small nonprofit than it would, for example, here at Carroll Lutheran or at Miller's Grant. So part of it is setting a strategy for each organization and what are the different fundraising mechanisms that we would employ in that strategy. Here we do direct mail appeals and other appeals. We do a few events. We have a planned giving function, and we receive wills and bequests from a number of residents and others. We try to do educational seminars to help people understand some of their philanthropic opportunities, and we do a lot of grant writing, especially since the pandemic began. There have been a lot of stimulus and relief funding opportunities and other opportunities that we've tried to take advantage of. So a lot of hats.
And I can't tell you how important that grant writing piece of it has come into play in the last couple of years, and truly the success we've seen from that. So I do want to give you a little bit of a pat on the back and some kudos. And it's been very, very helpful in the big picture of being able to manage the pandemic. So thank you for that. And I wanted to just kind of go back, and this isn't a question on your list, so I'm going to throw you a curveball here, but think about philanthropy. Why is it so important to this organization, whether at Carroll Lutheran Village or Lutheran Village at Miller's Grant?
So I think it's, like I said, there's kind of a different strategy depending on, the type of organization. So unlike, say, a small nonprofit that relies on a lot of fundraising for the majority of its revenue, Carroll Lutheran and Miller's Grant are able to do, through philanthropy, a couple of important things. The first is resident assistance or benevolent care. I think that's first and foremost for us, that we have made a commitment to care for the residents who come to us and who perhaps may fall short on some of the resources that they need through no fault of their own. Increased healthcare costs or just longevity at times. The other part is that we're able to do kind of enhancement, value-added opportunities that we might not otherwise be able to do, that might not fit into the budget for any given year. Philanthropy allows us to serve our residents and enhance programs and services in that way.
I think one of the things that I think maybe people don't always realize is what happens in philanthropy outside of, say, the run walk that we did at Lutheran Village at Miller's Grant or the golf tournament. There is a considerable amount of work outside of those traditional type of campaigns that most people are maybe more familiar with. And I would argue at times probably have that bigger bang for the buck long term for us in terms of meeting those immediate needs, whether it's the grant writing or other opportunities. But certainly it's an opportunity to share a mission as well, which I think is equally important for our current residents and hopefully our neighbors out there in the broader community. So as the Vice President of Philanthropy, what have you been focused on the most this year?
Well, we obviously are still in the pandemic, hopefully towards the latter end of that, but there have been a lot of stimulus funds and COVID relief opportunities, and even the reporting of some of the funds that we received last year. Some, when you receive funds from the federal government, it comes with a lot of detail, a lot of data that needs to be gathered. So in collaboration with the finance department, we've worked on those efforts, and probably a little more exciting are our grant efforts in renewable energy and green initiatives. We've been able to do a lot of really exciting things and have more in the future prepared. We've got solar projects that will be kicked off very soon at both of our campuses. We have LED lighting replacement that has happened here at Carroll Lutheran and is in the works for Miller's Grant. We're looking at electric vehicle charging stations at both campuses. We've done some building energy tune-ups that have been paid for almost exclusively through grants. And some others that we're looking for in the future. So a lot of nice sort of going green initiatives. And in some of those we have several phases of that, and we're just getting sort of the first phase of those things going and hope to do more in the future.
Yeah, and I'll just comment on green initiatives. I think I can speak for Dr. Janet and I, is that we're both very bullish on green initiatives and the impact it could have on our communities. And so we're thrilled that we're starting that movement here. We know there's a lot of interest among residents too, and so certainly we love to hear your ideas. Hopefully we can incorporate some of those in our bigger picture planning. And as Dr. Janet said, a lot of these projects have multiple phases. When you're rolling these things out, like LED lights, on a 100-acre campus or a 50-acre campus, takes quite some time. So, but we'll get there though, and we're excited about it and have good partners internally, and our operations team is adapting along the way. And so that's a big deal for us, and it'll show significant savings at the end of this. So, what are your top 2 to 3 initiatives you want to accomplish next year? So 2022. Seems like it's far away, but it really is.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. Certainly, an important part will be just continuing the initiatives that we've already begun, the things that we do day in and day out. We continually try and do those a little better, enhance those, and they take up, a decent chunk of our time. We want to continue with new opportunities for renewable energy and other efforts like that. There will hopefully still be stimulus and other grant funds that we can seek. We're constantly on the lookout for those kinds of things and the ways that they may serve our organization. And hopefully in 2022 we'll be looking at some capital campaign opportunities and kickoffs. 2 projects that are really near and dear to my heart. The first at Miller's Grant will be a new chapel and performing arts center, and all that means. Perhaps a little bit after that, not next year, but hopefully not too far down the road, will be a revitalization of the healthcare center here at Carroll Lutheran. And I'm really excited about both of those projects. I'm really looking forward to hopefully helping to make those the best they can be.
Now, I wanted to touch on Miller's Grant's Chapel real briefly here, because I know some people may be listening and watching us later on and going, well, wait a minute, why are you doing a campaign around the chapel? I thought it was part of this bigger project and part of LSMMD's plans to fund. And that is 100% true. Do you want to give a little more color into what that campaign will be about?
Well, so like I talked about before, one of the opportunities that we always have with philanthropy is to enhance projects and programs and services. And so there are hopefully things that we can do in that space, both from seeing it utilized as a chapel, seeing it utilized as a performing arts center, seeing it utilized as just a place to celebrate and gather, and the philanthropic dollars may be able to enhance the kinds of things that go into that space.
Well said, thank you. And I do want to touch back on something you mentioned a moment ago, which is that grant opportunity piece. And one thing that I know most people don't know, but Janet reaches out on a fairly frequent basis to myself and Stephen Powell, our Vice President of Finance and Technology, and shares some of those opportunities along the way. And what I always appreciate about her is that I get the MBA bullet point. Here's what you need to do. Here's how we can accomplish this. Here's how the time frame. So certainly allows us the opportunity to be in the now where we can potentially benefit from those grants. So what question are you asked the most in your role?
I think the question I'm asked the most is, where do I send the check? You would think, no matter how many times we print it, but that is the question that we're asked the most. There are a lot of questions that come to philanthropy. I think there's a lot of myths still about what philanthropy is. And so we spend some of our time helping people understand what we're fundraising for, what the outcomes look like, what the opportunities are. We try and match donors with the passions and the things that they care about. And we have a lot of opportunities for philanthropy that make that possible. Again, for whatever it is that is a particular person's interest and passion.
So I'm going to go back to personal here. So how do you spend your spare time? Do you have any hobbies that you invest in?
So two questions there. The first may surprise folks. I'm a Benedictine monk, and I spend a good part of my spare time in daily prayer and in study with my monastic community. Beyond that, I have far more hobbies than I have time for. There are lots and lots of things that I enjoy doing. I have, as a matter of fact, if you walk into my basement, you'll see sort of these little sections. It's kind of this big open daylight basement space, and if you were to go there, you'd see pretty clearly what my hobbies are. There's a library, and there's an art studio, there's a section for music, and so I have a lot of things that I enjoy doing. A game table, we like to play what we call Euro games, and so we have a like I said, more hobbies than I have time to enjoy.
See, you are fascinating, Dr. J. This is exactly why I wanted you to do this interview. I learned something new today. So, when you look at some of those age-old questions about who you would love to meet and spend time with, is there somebody that you'd love to have lunch with someday and just pepper them with questions?
I think I'd love to have lunch with the Pope, and maybe a cappuccino as well. I have some hard questions for him, but I'd love to just spend time with him.
How much time do you think you need?
No, I don't know.
If you could have all the time in the world.
If I could have all the time in the world, maybe a day.
Now, would you come with a series of questions, or would they just be flowing free?
Both.
Yeah. And give me a little flavor, not necessarily the exact questions, but religious-based or life or what?
No, I think they would be religious-based and, religious-based.
Now, is it this Pope or any
This Pope.
Okay, so this Pope specifically. Okay. So what's on your bucket list? What do you have to do? And sometimes I'm not a big fan of this question. The reason why is that people think about death in that question, but I think about it more in terms of how do you want to spend your life? And so what is on that bucket list? What's the number one thing, or somewhere close to the top?
if I were to say the number one, the number one thing I enjoy today is helping other people realize their bucket list dreams. I have found that to be so gratifying. I've had the opportunity to do that with my mother, with some residents, and if I had to set aside all my bucket list for the one priority, that would be it.
What about skydiving? Will you do that?
I would do skydiving.
Will you jump out of the plane with me?
Yeah,
Or does it have to
absolutely.
be somebody else?
Absolutely. I sure would.
I don't know if I really want to jump out of a plane, but just thought I'd check. Do you have a favorite movie?
I have two favorite movies, and they are so polar opposite. The first is Best in Show. It's sort of a parody on the Carroll dog show, you know, and it just makes me laugh. And I could watch it or little parts of it sometimes when I just need to pick me up. I have it on DVD and I'll stick it in and just watch a few scenes of it, and it always makes me laugh. The other is much more touching, really a story of redemption. It's called Lagan. It's a Bollywood movie that, interestingly, the setting is through a cricket game, which I know nothing about. If you watch the movie, however, you kind of have a sense by the end of the movie how the game is played. And it's just a beautiful movie.
So how were you turned on to that movie?
Oh, I don't recall.
I hadn't heard of that one. I might have to check that out just to see.
It's
what
been
you got
around for
to.
some years, but it's really a beautiful movie.
So where do you like to go when you eat out? I know you live closest to Emmitsburg, or thereabouts, or somewhere between there and Gettysburg, right? So when you think about where you like to go out to eat, where is it? I'm sure you have a lot of choices between there coming into town here.
Interestingly, I don't eat out much at all. We cook at home 99% of the time. There are probably many restaurants that I've never visited once in 15 years living here. At this point, we like those that have outdoor seating. I adore and miss Mexican foods. I'd say that's probably top of my list. And I enjoy really nice, fine food when we travel. Sort of a really culinary delight, to kind of splurge a little bit.
I am totally with you on Mexican food, but specifically with tacos. I'm on a hunt for tacos, so if you find a good place, let me know. But I would go to any Mexican place. So, thinking about today, and I know I haven't asked all the questions under the sun, but I'm curious, is there anything that you'd like to share beyond what I've asked?
Gosh, I can't think of anything.
All right, I won't put you on the spot. I know that was the last curveball I could throw you, so I thought I would try. But I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today on our interview series. Dr. Janet Buchanan, thanks for sitting on the hot seat for a few minutes with us today and sharing a little bit about your life. And I hope if anyone is interested in philanthropy or giving or just wants to reach out to Dr. Janet to learn a little bit more about her, that you don't hesitate to do so. Thank you.
So I'm going to jump back one quick second and take the opportunity for your last question. Maybe kiss up to the boss a little bit and say thank you. I really have appreciated your leadership. I think that philanthropy has been able to do a lot in the last couple of years that we couldn't have otherwise done without the support, without the leadership and direction and saying, yes, that's important, let's do that. Some of the things that we've done will pay dividends in the long term, and that's not always easy sometimes when there are a lot of short-term things that need to be taken care of, and I really appreciate that vision.
Thank you for sharing that, and you didn't have to say it. I know that makes me uncomfortable, but I do appreciate it, and I enjoy
really mean
working
that.
with you.
Yeah.
Well, that is it for today. Thank you again for joining us and for getting to know Dr. J. So have a great rest of your day.